It was a quiet Tuesday evening, the kind where the city seems to breathe a little slower. The streets of downtown Los Angeles were bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, and the air carried a faint chill that hinted at the approaching winter. Vin Diesel, the global superstar known for his larger-than-life roles on the big screen, decided to step away from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood for a while. He wanted to visit one of his restaurants, Vin's Bistro, tucked into a cozy corner of the bustling city. This wasn't just any restaurant, it was a place close to his heart. Vin had poured his soul into creating a space where people could come together, share meals, and feel like they belonged. From the warm lighting to the carefully curated menu, every detail reflected his vision of comfort and community. But tonight, he wasn't there to check on operations or make sure things were running smoothly. No, this visit was different. It was personal. For weeks now, whispers had reached Vin's ears. Little murmurs from the staff about an undercurrent of tension in the restaurant. Nothing specific, just a vague sense that something wasn't quite right. Being the hands-on person he was, Vin couldn't ignore it. He needed to see for himself what was going on. So, instead of calling ahead or making a grand entrance, he chose to slip in unnoticed, blending into the background as much as someone of his stature possibly could. Dressed casually in a pair of worn jeans, a plain black hoodie, and a pair of dark sunglasses, Vin looked more like a regular guy out for a stroll than the action hero millions adored. His signature bald head might have given him away if not for the hoodie pulled low over his forehead. As he approached the back door of the restaurant, he paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. There was something comforting about being here, away from the cameras and flashing lights. This was his world, a place where life felt real and raw. He pushed open the heavy metal door, stepping inside with quiet determination. The familiar hum of activity greeted him immediately. The clatter of pots and pans, the sizzle of food hitting hot grills, and the occasional burst of laughter from the kitchen staff. Everything seemed normal at first glance. Servers bustled around, balancing trays laden with dishes while chefs shouted orders over the din. Yet beneath the surface, Vin sensed something was off. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. As he made his way through the narrow hallway leading to the main dining area, a sound stopped him dead in his tracks. At first it was faint, a soft whimper barely audible over the chaos. But as he stood still, straining to listen, the noise grew clearer. Someone was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet desperation that tugged at Vin's heartstrings. Curiosity mingled with concern as he followed the sound. It led him to the edge of the kitchen, where he pressed himself against the wall, hidden from view. Peering cautiously around the corner, he spotted Mia, one of the servers who had been with the restaurant since its opening day. She was sitting on a stool near the prep counter, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, each tremor carrying the weight of whatever burden she carried. Vin's chest tightened as he watched her. He knew Mia well, or at least, he thought he did. She was always cheerful, always smiling, even during the busiest shifts. Customers loved her for her warmth and intent. He stepped forward quietly, unsure of what to say but knowing he couldn't just walk away. Mia didn't notice him at first. She was too lost in her own world, overwhelmed by emotions she'd kept bottled up for far too long. Vin cleared his throat gently, causing her to look up abruptly. For a split second, confusion flickered across her face before recognition set in. Her eyes widened and she quickly wiped her tears, embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable state. "Hey," Vin said softly, his voice devoid of judgment. "Are you okay?" Mia hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to confide in someone and fearing she might be judged. Finally, she shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know what to do anymore," she admitted, her voice trembling. "My mom needs surgery next week, but I can't afford it. I've tried everything. I've picked up extra shifts, cut back on everything I can, but it's still not enough." Her words hung in the air, heavy with despair. Vin listened intently, his expression unreadable but his mind racing. He knew all too well what it meant to struggle financially, Growing up in poverty, he had faced countless moments when hope seemed distant and solutions impossible. Those memories came flooding back now, fueling his empathy for Mia's plight. Instead of offering empty reassurances, Vin simply nodded. "Thank you for telling me," he said sincerely. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone." With that, he stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Let me help you figure this out." Mia blinked, stunned by his kindness. "But why would you—" "Because we're a family here," Vin interrupted gently. "And families take care of each other." That simple statement carried immense weight. For Mia, it was a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't as alone as she'd feared. And for Vin, it was a reaffirmation of why he'd opened the restaurant in the first place. This wasn't just a business, it was a community, a place where people mattered more than profits and compassion outweighed convenience. As they talked further, Vin learned more about Mia's situation: the mounting medical bills, the sleepless nights spent worrying, the sacrifices she'd made, without complaint. Each detail painted a picture of resilience and strength, qualities Vin deeply admired. By the time their conversation ended, both of them felt a renewed sense of purpose. Before leaving, Vin promised Mia that he would find a way to ease her burden. He didn't elaborate on how, preferring to let actions speak louder than words. But, as he walked out of the restaurant later that night, his mind was already working on a plan, one that would not only change Mia's life, but also transform the culture of his entire establishment. Little did he know, this decision would ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what he could imagine. The next morning, Vin woke up with a sense of purpose that had been missing for a long time. As he sipped his coffee and stared out the window at the Los Angeles skyline, he couldn't stop thinking about Mia. And not just her, but everyone who worked tirelessly behind the scenes at his restaurant. These were the people who made Vin's Bistro more than just a place to eat. They turned it into a warm, welcoming space where customers felt like family. Yet despite their efforts, many of them carried burdens no one else could see. Vin knew that creating the family fund was only half the battle. The real challenge lay in making sure it resonated with the staff, not as some distant corporate initiative, but as something deeply personal and meaningful. To do that, he needed to approach this carefully. This wasn't about throwing money at a problem or checking off boxes on a list of good deeds. It was about fostering trust, building relationships, and showing his team that he genuinely cared about their well-being. First, he reached out to his accountant. Over the phone, Vin explained his vision. A portion of the restaurant's profits would be set aside each month to support employees facing unexpected hardships, medical emergencies, rent crises, car repairs, anything that threatened to derail their lives. He emphasized that the fund should operate confidentially, ensuring applicants wouldn't feel embarrassed or judged. Contributions from patrons would also be welcome, but strictly optional. No pressure, no guilt trips, just an opportunity for customers to give back if they chose to. His accountant listened patiently, asking practical questions about logistics and budgeting. By the end of the call, Vin felt confident that the financial side of things was covered. But numbers weren't enough. For this program to succeed, it needed a human touch, one that came directly from him. That's when Vin decided to involve his management team. He called an emergency meeting later that afternoon, gathering his general manager, head chef, and HR representative in a small conference room above the restaurant. When he walked in, sunglasses still perched on his nose, the group looked surprised. Emergency meetings weren't common, and Vin rarely attended them personally. "Thanks for coming," he began, pulling off his sunglasses and leaning forward slightly. His tone was serious yet warm. "I need your help with something important." The room fell silent as Vin recounted what he'd overheard in the kitchen 2 nights prior. Mia's tears, her struggle to pay for her mother's surgery, and the realization that she wasn't alone in feeling overwhelmed. He didn't name names or share specifics respecting Mia's privacy, but he painted a vivid picture of the emotional toll financial stress could take on someone working so hard to keep a smile on their face for others. "I can't sit back and do nothing," Vin said firmly. "We've built this restaurant around the idea of being a community, a family, and families don't let each other suffer in silence. He then laid out his plan for the family fund, explaining how it would work and why it mattered. At first there was hesitation. Questions arose about potential misuse of funds, administrative challenges, and whether employees would actually use it. Vin listened patiently, addressing each concern thoughtfully. "What if someone takes advantage of it?" the general manager asked cautiously. "It's possible," Vin admitted, "but I'd rather risk that than turn away someone who truly needs help. Trust has to start somewhere. If we build this program with integrity and transparency, I believe our team will respect it." The HR representative chimed in next, worried about confidentiality. "How do we ensure people feel safe applying? Some might not want others to know they're struggling." "That's exactly why we'll make it anonymous," Vin replied. "Applications go straight to HR. You guys handle the vetting process discreetly. Only those involved will know the details. We'll protect their dignity every step of the way." As the discussion continued, the initial skepticism gave way to enthusiasm. The head chef, a gruff but kind-hearted man named Tony, nodded approvingly. "You're right, Vin. This isn't just about business, it's about people. Let's make this happen." With the management team on board, Vin turned his attention to the next critical step, announcing the initiative to the staff. He knew this part wouldn't be easy. While some might embrace the idea immediately, others might be skeptical, wondering if it was genuine or just another flashy gesture meant to boost morale temporarily. To avoid any misunderstandings, Vin wanted to deliver the message himself, in person. He scheduled a staff meeting for the following day during the restaurant's slow afternoon hours. Word spread quickly among the employees, sparking curiosity. Why was Vin calling a meeting? What could be so urgent that he'd show up unannounced? Rumors flew, ranging from wild speculation about celebrity guest appearances to fears of layoffs or policy changes. When the day arrived, the staff gathered nervously in the dining area. Tables and chairs had been pushed aside to create space, and the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Some whispered excitedly, while others exchanged wary glances. Then the door opened and Vin walked in. At first, no one recognized him. Dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie, he blended in seamlessly until he removed his sunglasses. Gasps rippled through the room as realization dawned. Employees shifted awkwardly, unsure how to react. Was this really happening? Was Vin Diesel standing in front of them? "Hey everyone," Vin said, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. He smiled warmly, trying to ease the tension. "Thanks for taking the time to meet with me today." For a moment, all eyes were glued to him, waiting for what came next. Vin took a deep breath, scanning the faces before him. He saw familiar ones: servers, bartenders, dishwashers, hosts, all the people who kept the restaurant running smoothly. They were the backbone of everything he'd built here, and yet, he realized now, he hadn't done enough to show them how much they meant to him. "I'm not here to talk about operations or menus or anything like that," Vin continued. "This is about you. All of you." The room grew quieter, the weight of his words sinking in. Vin paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to hold their attention. Then, he dove into the heart of the matter. "A few nights ago, I stopped by the restaurant unannounced," he began. "I heard something that stuck with me, something that reminded me of my own struggles growing up, times when life felt overwhelming and I didn't know where to turn. One of you was hurting, dealing with something big, something scary, and doing it quietly without asking for help." Let the implication hang in the air, giving the staff a chance to connect the dots themselves. A few glanced at Mia, who sat near the front, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked down, clearly uncomfortable under the sudden scrutiny. "I'm telling you this because I want you to know that you're not invisible," Vin said, his voice softening. "Your hard work doesn't go unnoticed, and neither does your pain. Too often we assume people have it all together, but the truth is we're all fighting battles no one else sees." He went on to explain the family fund, detailing how it would work and why he believed it was necessary. His passion was undeniable, his sincerity unwavering. By the time he finished speaking, the room was completely silent, save for the occasional sniffle from someone moved to tears. This isn't charity, Vin concluded. It's solidarity. We're a team, a family. And families take care of each other. Always. Applause erupted, spontaneous and heartfelt. Employees rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some wiping away tears. Mia, overcome with emotion, buried her face in her hands, unable to hold back anymore. In that moment, Vin knew he'd done the right thing. This wasn't just about solving problems. It was about creating a culture of compassion, one that would endure long after the applause faded. As the meeting ended and the staff dispersed, Vin lingered, shaking hands and exchanging hugs with those who approached him. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly connected, not as a celebrity but as a human being sharing a journey with others. And deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Vin stood frozen in the dimly lit hallway, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had just heard. The kitchen was alive with its usual rhythm, chefs shouting orders, pans clanging, and steam rising from bubbling pots. But none of that could drown out the sound of Mia's muffled sobs. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it carried a depth of pain that made Vin's chest tighten. He felt torn between stepping forward to offer comfort and staying hidden, unsure if interrupting her private moment would make things worse. For a long time, he simply listened. Another server, a young man named Jake, had noticed Mia too and was trying to console her. His voice was soft, barely audible over the kitchen noise, but Vin caught snippets of their conversation. "Hey, Mia, you don't have to go through this alone," Jake said gently. "We're here for you." Mia sniffled, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her uniform. "I know, Jake. I just hate feeling like this, like I'm failing." Her voice cracked as she continued. "My mom's surgery is next week and I've done everything I can think of to save up for it, but it's still not enough. What am I supposed to do?" Jake hesitated, clearly at a loss for words. He patted her shoulder awkwardly, offering reassurance that sounded more hopeful than certain. "Things will work out, Mia. They always do." But even as he spoke, Vin could see the doubt written all over Mia's face. She didn't believe him. How could she? When you're drowning in worry and responsibility, platitudes like "things will work out" feel hollow. Vin knew that better than anyone. He thought back to his own childhood, growing worried about how his family would afford groceries or pay rent. There were nights when sleep eluded him because the weight of uncertainty pressed down so hard it felt suffocating. As he leaned against the wall, unnoticed by both Mia and Jake, Vin found himself reflecting on how far he'd come since those days. Fame and success hadn't erased the memories of struggle. They had only deepened his understanding of what it meant to fight for survival. And now here was Mia, working tirelessly day after day, putting on a brave face while carrying a burden no one should have to bear alone. The irony wasn't lost on Vin either. Here she was, serving customers with a smile, making sure their meals were perfect, all while silently battling her own storm. That realization hit him like a punch to the gut. People often assumed that servers had easy jobs, but Vin knew better. They worked long hours on their feet, dealt with difficult customers, and relied on tips to make ends meet. For someone like Mia, who already carried so much outside of work, the stress must have been unbearable. He wanted to step forward, to let her know she wasn't invisible, that someone saw her pain and cared, but something held him back. Maybe it was the fear of intruding on a deeply personal moment, or maybe it was the knowledge that walking into the kitchen right then, sunglasses off and hoodie pulled back, would turn the entire atmosphere upside down. Everyone would stop what they were doing, staring in disbelief at the sight of their boss, not just a celebrity, but the Vin Diesel, standing there unexpectedly. So instead of revealing himself, Vin stayed where he was, listening intently. Every word Mia spoke tugged at his heartstrings. She talked about her mother, describing her as the strongest person she knew, someone who had sacrificed so much to give Mia a better life. Now faced with mounting medical bills and an uncertain future, Mia felt crushed under the pressure of living up to her mother's example. "I just want to be strong for her, you know," Mia said, her voice breaking. "But some days I feel like I'm failing her, like I'm not doing enough." Jake nodded sympathetically, though Vin could tell he didn't fully grasp the depth of Mia's despair. You're stronger than you think, Mia. Your mom knows that too. It was clear that Jake meant well, but his words lacked the substance needed to ease Mia's fears. Words alone couldn't fix her situation. What she needed was action, real, tangible support that went beyond kind gestures and sympathetic nods. And as Vin stood there, hidden in the shadows, he realized that providing that support was within his power. By the time Jake finally coaxed Mia into taking a short break to collect herself, Vin had slipped away unnoticed. He left the restaurant, quietly, his mind racing with thoughts and emotions swirling inside him. The cool night air greeted him as he stepped outside, but it did little to calm the storm brewing in his head. All he could think about was Mia's tears, her desperation, and the crushing weight of financial insecurity that had driven her to this point. Walking aimlessly through the streets of Los Angeles, Vin replayed the conversation in his mind, dissecting every detail. He couldn't shake the image of Mia sitting on that stool, shoulders slumped, tears streaming down her face. It reminded him of moments from his past when he had felt powerless, overwhelmed by circumstances beyond his control. Those memories were painful, but they also fueled his determination to help others avoid similar struggles. As he wandered, Vin began piecing together a plan. Helping Mia directly was the obvious first step. He could cover her mother's medical expenses anonymously, sparing her the embarrassment of accepting charity. But he knew that wouldn't solve the bigger issue. What about other employees facing hardships? What about the countless people who suffered in silence, too proud to ask for help, or too ashamed to admit they needed it? That's when the idea struck him. A fund specifically designed to support employees during tough times. Not a loan, not a handout, but a genuine lifeline offered without judgment or strings attached. He envisioned it as part of the restaurant's culture, woven into its fabric like the tables and chairs. Employees could apply confidentially, ensuring their dignity remained intact. Contributions would come from the restaurant's profits, supplemented by optional donations from patrons who believed in the cause. The more Vin thought about it, the more excited he became. This wasn't just about fixing Mia's immediate problem. It was about creating a lasting impact. It was about building a workplace where people felt valued, supported, and empowered to thrive. Most importantly, it was about fostering a sense of community, a true family dynamic where everyone looked out for each other. By the time Vin returned home, exhaustion had set in, but his resolve was stronger than ever. He spent the rest of the night drafting emails to his accountant and management team, outlining his vision for what he tentatively called the family fund. Each keystroke felt like progress, like he was inching closer to turning his idea into reality. Yet despite the excitement bubbling inside him, Vin couldn't ignore the nagging voice in the back of his mind. Would the staff trust him? Would they see this initiative as genuine, or would they view it as another PR stunt? He knew trust wasn't something that could be built overnight. It required transparency, consistency, and most importantly, authenticity. With that in mind, Vin EA decided to take one final step before launching the program. He would address the staff personally. No press releases, no grand announcements, just an honest conversation about why this mattered to him and how he hoped it would change their lives for the better. As he drifted off to sleep that night, Vin felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of something new, not just for Mia, but for everyone connected to Vin's bistro. He didn't know exactly how it would unfold, but one thing was certain. He was ready to lead with his heart. The applause in the dining area slowly faded, but the energy remained electric. Employees lingered, chatting excitedly about what Vin had just announced. Some hugged each other, while others wiped away tears of relief and gratitude. It was clear that the family fund had struck a chord deep within the team. For many, it wasn't just about financial support, it was validation. Validation that their struggles mattered, that their boss saw them as more than just workers clocking in and out, and that they were part of something bigger than themselves. Vin stood near the front of the room, watching the scene unfold with quiet satisfaction. He hadn't expected such an overwhelming response, but he couldn't deny how much it meant to him. As people began approaching him one by one to thank him or share their thoughts, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a program, it was a promise. To them, to himself, and to the values he wanted his restaurant to embody. Maya was among the first to step forward. She hesitated at first, unsure of what to say, but when she finally spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. I don't even know where to start, she admitted, looking down at her feet. Thank you doesn't feel like enough. Vin smiled warmly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You don't have to thank me, he replied gently. This isn't about me. It's about making sure you and everyone else here knows you're not alone. What you're going through is hard, Mia. But you've got us. All of us. Her eyes filled with tears again. But this time, they were tears of gratitude rather than despair. You have no idea how much this means to me, she whispered. Not just for my mom, but for everything. Knowing someone cares that we all care, it changes everything. Vin nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Growing up, there had been moments when he'd felt invisible, like his struggles didn't matter to anyone. Those memories stayed with him, shaping the way he viewed kindness and compassion. Now, standing here, seeing the impact of his actions, he realized how powerful it was to make someone feel seen and valued. As the staff meeting wrapped up, Vin gathered his management team once more to go over the next steps. They needed to finalize the logistics of the family fund, ensuring it was implemented smoothly and transparently. The HR representative took charge of designing the application process, emphasizing confidentiality and ease of access. Meanwhile, the general manager volunteered to draft a letter explaining the initiative to customers, inviting them to contribute if they wished. We'll also need to figure out how to track contributions and disbursements, the accountant added, jotting notes onto a clipboard, and we should consider setting up a committee to review applications fairly. Vin listened intently, nodding along. Let's keep it simple, he suggested. No unnecessary hoops to jump through. If someone needs help, they shouldn't have to fight to get it. Everyone agreed, and by the end of the meeting they had a solid plan in place. The fund would launch officially in 2 weeks, giving the team enough time to spread the word and prepare. In the meantime, Vin decided to take matters into his own hands. That evening, he called his personal accountant and arranged for an anonymous donation to cover Mia's mother's upcoming surgery. He didn't want her to wait another day worrying about finances when he could act immediately. Over the next few days, excitement continued to build among the staff. Flyers announcing the Family Fund appeared in the break room, detailing how it worked and encouraging employees to reach out if they needed assistance. To Vin's delight, several servers and kitchen staff approached him privately to express their gratitude, not just for the fund itself, but for the culture of openness and trust it represented. One afternoon, as Vin stopped by the restaurant, unannounced, a habit he'd developed since his last visit, he noticed a small group of employees gathered around a table during their break. Curious, he wandered closer and saw them brainstorming ways to promote the fund among customers. One server suggested adding a line to receipts, inviting diners to round up their bills as a donation. Another proposed hosting a monthly family night event, where proceeds from special menu items would go directly to the fund. Wow, Vin said, clearing his throat to announce his presence. The group turned, startled but quickly smiling when they recognized him. These are some great ideas. They beamed with pride, eager to share their thoughts. We figured, why not involve the customers too, said Jake, the young server who had comforted Mia in the kitchen. A lot of them already love coming here because of the vibe. If we explain what the fund is for, I think they'll want to help. Vin nodded approvingly. Exactly. It's not just about us, it's about building a community. And communities thrive when everyone contributes. Inspired by their enthusiasm, Vin spent the rest of the day working alongside the team to refine their ideas. By the time he left that evening, plans for the first family night were well underway. Servers volunteered to decorate the dining area with photos and stories, shared anonymously, of how the fund had helped employees in need. The head chef, Tony, promised to create a special dish inspired by his own childhood, a hearty stew that reminded him of family dinners growing up. When the big day arrived, the restaurant buzzed with anticipation. Customers filed in, greeted by cheerful servers wearing custom-made pins shaped like hearts with the words, "We're family," printed on them. Posters adorned the walls, explaining the purpose of the Family Fund and encouraging patrons to participate. Even local news outlets caught wind of the event, sending reporters to cover the story. As the evening progressed, Vin mingled with guests, sharing anecdotes about the restaurant and answering questions about the fund. Many were moved by his sincerity, vowing to return for future events. Others slipped envelopes containing donations into a locked box near the entrance, their faces lighting up with pride at being part of something meaningful. By closing time, the staff gathered in the dining area to count the proceeds. Cheers erupted when they realized they'd raised thousands of dollars, far exceeding their initial goal. But it wasn't the money that made the night unforgettable. It was the shared sense of accomplishment, the knowledge that they'd come together as a team to create something truly special. As Vin looked around the room, taking in the smiling faces of his employees, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was what he'd always dreamed of, a workplace where people supported each other, celebrated victories together, and faced challenges as a united front. It wasn't perfect, and there would undoubtedly be bumps along the road. But for now, it was enough. Before heading home, Vin pulled Mia aside for a private moment. "How's your mom doing?" he asked softly. She smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "She's doing better thanks to you. We couldn't have done it without the fund and without you believing in us." Vin shook his head, brushing off her gratitude. "It's not about me, Mia. It's about all of us. Remember that." With those words, he left the restaurant, stepping out into the cool Los Angeles night. As he walked away, he glanced back one last time, feeling a deep sense of pride. The Family Fund was more than just a program. It was proof that compassion, empathy, and unity could transform lives. And for Vin Diesel, that was worth more than any award or accolade. In the weeks and months that followed the launch of the Family Fund, the ripple effects began to spread far beyond what Vin had initially imagined. What started as a simple idea born out of compassion quickly grew into something transformative, not just for the employees at Vin's Bistro, but for the entire community surrounding it. The fund became more than a safety net. It became a symbol of hope, proof that even in a world often driven by profit and competition, kindness could still thrive. For Mia, life changed in ways she never thought possible. With her mother's surgery successfully completed and recovery underway, she returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose. Gone was the weight of constant worry that had once shadowed her every move. Instead, she carried gratitude, a deep, unshakable appreciation for the people around her who had stepped up when she needed them most. But Mia didn't stop there. Inspired by Vin's generosity, she decided to pay it forward. She volunteered to oversee applications for the Family Fund, ensuring that others received the same lifeline she once did. Every time someone approached her hesitantly, unsure of whether they should ask for help, Mia would offer a reassuring smile and say, "It's okay. This is why the fund exists, to make sure no one has to face these challenges alone." Her words carried weight because they came from experience. She understood the fear and vulnerability that came with admitting you needed support, and she made it her mission to create a judgment-free space where everyone felt safe. Mia wasn't the only one inspired by the initiative. Other employees began stepping up too, finding creative ways to contribute to the fund and strengthen the restaurant's culture of care. Jake, the young server who had comforted Mia during her breakdown, spearheaded a series of fundraising events called Family Fridays. Once a month, the restaurant hosted themed nights, live music performances, trivia contests, or cooking demonstrations, with all proceeds going directly to the fund. These events brought customers and staff together, fostering connections that went beyond the usual diner-server dynamic. Customers, too, embraced the spirit of giving. Many regulars began rounding up their bills at checkout, donating the extra change to the fund. Some went further, leaving handwritten notes alongside their donations, sharing stories of how the restaurant had touched their lives. One elderly woman wrote about how the staff always remembered her name and favorite order, making her feel less lonely after losing her husband. Another customer described how a server had gone above and beyond to accommodate his son's food allergies, turning what could have been a stressful outing into a joyful family dinner. These notes were pinned to a bulletin board near the entrance, creating a tapestry of gratitude and connection that reminded everyone why they were there. Word of the family fund spread beyond the walls of the restaurant, inspiring other businesses in the area to adopt similar initiatives. Local coffee shops, bakeries, and boutiques reached out to Vin, asking for advice on how to implement programs that supported their own teams. He gladly shared his insights, emphasizing the importance of trust, transparency, and empathy. "It's not about being perfect," he told them. "It's about showing up for your people, listening to their needs, and doing whatever you can to help." As news of the fund gained traction, media outlets picked up the story, shining a spotlight on Vin's efforts. Interviews poured in from newspapers, podcasts, and television shows, each eager to highlight the actor-turned-restaurateur's commitment to social responsibility. While some might have seen this attention as an opportunity for self-promotion, Vin used it differently. In every interview, he redirected the focus back to the staff, crediting them for making the program a success. "This isn't my story, it's theirs," he said repeatedly. "They're the ones keeping the restaurant running day in and day out. All I did was listen." Despite the growing recognition, Vin remained grounded. He continued visiting the restaurant regularly, often slipping in unnoticed to observe the energy firsthand. Sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee, he'd watch as servers chatted warmly with customers, chefs worked seamlessly in the kitchen, and managers checked in with their teams. There was a palpable sense of camaraderie, a feeling that everyone was truly invested in each other's success. It filled him with pride, knowing that this was exactly what he'd hoped to achieve. One evening, during a particularly busy dinner rush, Vin noticed a young dishwasher named Carlos lingering nervously near the host stand. Curious, he approached him and asked if everything was okay. Carlos hesitated before explaining that his younger sister, who lived in another state, had been diagnosed with a serious illness. Their family couldn't afford the treatment, and he felt helpless, miles away from home. Without hesitation, Vinny reassured him. "That's what the fund is for, Carlos. Don't hesitate to apply. We'll figure it out together." Overwhelmed with relief, Carlos thanked him profusely, promising to repay the kindness someday. Vin simply smiled and replied, "Paying it forward is repayment enough." Moments like these reinforced Vin's belief in the power of community. Each act of kindness created a chain reaction, inspiring others to do the same. Servers tipped generously to coworkers having tough days. Customers left larger than usual gratuities for staff members juggling multiple jobs. Even suppliers offered discounts or extended payment deadlines when they heard about the fund's impact. It was as though the entire ecosystem surrounding the restaurant had shifted, aligning itself with the values of compassion and mutual support. By the end of the year, the family fund had grown exponentially, thanks to contributions from both the restaurant's profits and generous patrons. Dozens of employees had benefited from its resources, using the funds to cover medical expenses, rent payments, car repairs, and other emergencies. Yet perhaps the most significant outcome was the shift in mindset it fostered. Employees no longer saw themselves as individuals working separate shifts. They viewed themselves as part of a collective, a family united by shared goals and values. To celebrate the fund's success, Vin organized a special holiday party at the restaurant. Staff members and their families gathered for an evening of food, music, and laughter. As speeches were given and awards handed out, Vin took the stage to deliver a heartfelt message. "When I opened this restaurant, I wanted it to be more than "Just a place to eat," he began, his voice steady yet emotional. "I wanted it to be a home, a place where people felt valued, supported, and loved. Tonight I see that dream realized. Because of all of you, we've created something extraordinary, something that proves that when we come together, we can overcome anything." His words earned thunderous applause, followed by a standing ovation. Later that night, as he mingled with guests, Vin found himself reflecting on how much had changed since that quiet Tuesday evening, when he'd first overheard Mia crying in the kitchen. Back then he hadn't known what the future held, only that he couldn't ignore the pain he'd witnessed. Now, standing amidst the joy and unity of his team, he knew he'd made the right decision. As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Vin stayed behind to help clean up. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes about his leadership style. He believed in leading by example, rolling up his sleeves alongside his employees, rather than expecting them to shoulder burdens alone. Together they tidied the dining area, wiped down tables, and swept floors, laughing and chatting as they worked. Before leaving, Vin paused by the door, glancing back at the now empty restaurant. On the wall near the kitchen hung a framed quote, one he'd commissioned shortly after launching the fund. "A family doesn't keep score, they take care of each other." It served as a daily reminder of the values that defined Vin's Bistro and the promise they'd made to one another. As he stepped outside into the crisp winter air, Vin felt a profound sense of peace. Life wasn't perfect, and challenges would undoubtedly arise again. But for now he knew they were ready to face whatever came next, together. And in that knowledge, he found strength, purpose, and hope.